I'm Richard Pinkerton from Nuts Corner, and I'm milking just over 200 cows here in the autumn calving system. We really started to think more about zero grazing. We had a couple of wet summers and we just couldn't cope, and the cows went out and they were doing damage. We brought them in, then you were switching them from one diet to another, which cows like consistency. And then it meant some fields were grazed and then some fields weren't, and it was just a nightmare then the rest of the season to get that back into kilter even when it did dry up. We just made the decision we were going to have to try and do things differently to suit our farm. A few years ago I built new feed space with zero grazing in mind. After I built the shed, I have my own silage wagon for making my own silage, so I was just using it to zero graze a bit, which worked fine, but it's quite a large wagon, it's quite heavy. And just when conditions were tricky, it wasn't just a machine for the job. And I also found you're using it every day for zero grazing, and then when you wanted to do your silage, it wasn't ready and it was wet grass in around it and stuff. It just wasn't ideal, so I decided to go ahead and get a zero grazer this year. When the zero grazer came, I cut them 4 kilos a meal, and they were up about a litre as well, so it was a big turnaround. So it was. At the minute the days of milk are very high. They're probably averaging about 270 days of milk, and they're only doing about 17 litres, but they're only getting a kilo a meal really is what they're averaging, so that must be 15 litres or more from grass, end of August, which I'm happy enough about. I've been zero grazing for about 3 years now, but now that I've got a proper zero grazer for the job, I think I'll be able to get more out of it. I'll get a longer season because it's later, and it'll just be a matter now starting a wee bit earlier in the spring and trying to get a wee bit later in the autumn and make the most out of the machine. With the wagon, I was cutting my front mower, so the biggest tractor in the yard I had to use, whereas now I'm using one of my smallest tractors, 90 horsepower, and it's working fine, so it is. I am fine with a zero grazer. The grass doesn't get bruised the same, and I think it keeps longer. And even when you put it out of it, it's easier to push up. It's not pushed into lumps or balls, and it's lighter in the ground too, and it's more compact. It's easier getting out of places, and you can nearly send anybody go and cut a bit of grass. At the weekend there, it was really heavy rain when I had to go out and cut the grass, and it seemed to cope fine. I was able to cut the grass and get it lifted even with it being wet. So I don't really have any worries about being able to work in different conditions, and I just went for the biggest wheels you could get, and hopefully that'll keep me up. Zero grazing is working for me at the minute. I'm happy with it. I suppose it depends on your own farm and your own situation, but definitely you can get a lot of grass into cows and cut your meal back, it's what we're all trying to do, I suppose.
I'm Andrew Dale, farming here in the Roe Valley up near the north coast of Northern Ireland. So we're a dairy farm here, milking about 120 cows along with my parents, farming about 230 acres, grow a wee bit of cereals for whole crop, but mainly 180 odd acres is all grassland. We won't be able to graze cows in February, also not able to graze cows during November, so try and get at least 2 good cuts of silage, potentially a third one some years. And then just in the last couple of years started growing a bit of whole crop, just to try and help boost milk production in the winter. And then the herd has always grazed full time during the summer. We ended up with cows being buffer fed with silage just because we only have 35 acres around the yard that we can walk cows to. Even with the addition of the underpass, I'd been interested in zero grazing. I did a few numbers and thought that was certainly an option for us, and so we've been zero grazing now here for the last 6 years. With the zero grazer, essentially my grazing platform's not 35 acres anymore, it's basically 180 acres, because if there's grass on a field anywhere on the farm, I can go and cut it and bring it in, so it gives you that wee bit of flexibility. Like most farms, I have fields that are drier than others. Most of the dry ones, in fairness, are not around the yard. And those fields tend to be the ones that you can get slurry out onto early and get fertiliser onto early, so that's where you have grass first, and also the fields that you'll have grass on last that you can actually still get an animal or a machine onto. So now we can extend the grazing season, particularly at the shoulders, just to really help get as much fresh grass into the cows as you can over the grazing season. So really the benefits of the zero grazing, we have found that not only are the cows more settled, they still go about their business on the grazing paddock, they're still grazed full time, but they're offered fresh grass in the house whenever they're in for milking. So the cows are in the yard an hour and a half or 2 hours twice a day. So basically the cows can utilise that time that they're in the yard and eat their belly full of fresh grass, takes the pressure off the grass that's available in the paddock. And we definitely have found the yields are well up in the last few years. Cows are milking well, milk protein and particularly drives on during the summer. 4.2 fat, 3.4 protein. Where costs are now, like silage is not a cheap forage to make anymore, bales are not cheap to make anymore. So basically if you can get it from the field into the animal as cheaply as you can, and the zero grazers maybe one way of doing that on itself is a cost saving, never mind the actual higher performance that you'll probably get from your animals in terms of yield and quality of the milk.